don't think it's fair to judge a book for not being as incredible as we thought it would be. It's not fair to the book to, go in with unrealistic expectations and then hold the fact that you had unrealistic expectations against the book when it's perhaps good but not as great as you hoped it would be. However, I think it's a very human feeling to, when you have that experience, when you expect a book to just be like a 6 out of 5 star book, and you finish it and you realize it's more like a maybe 4 out of 5 star book or a 3.5 out of 5 star book. I think it's very human to feel underwhelmed when you get to that point. It's kind of like when you eat a meal and you order this dish at a fancy restaurant and you're thinking this is going to be so good because it sounded really cool or really interesting and really tasty, and you get it and it's good, but it's not as good as you thought it would be. It's kind of like that. It's, again, not exactly fair to hold it against the food because it wasn't bad food. It was just not as incredible as you hoped it would be. And and I kind of had that experience with Anna Karenina. And I will say off the bat that I did love Anna Karenina. I did really enjoy large swaths of it, I think. This is about the title character, Anna Karenina, who is trapped in a loveless, passionless, boring marriage to Alexander Karenin, who is this very cold character. And she gets sort of swept off her feet by this young, dashing cavalry officer named Alexander Vronsky, and she has this love affair with him. And most of the novel does follow the affair of Anna and Vronsky and the sort of fallout from that, because obviously, this being a novel, obviously Karenin eventually finds out and, isn't happy, and then the plot ensues from there. I won't provide any more details, but needless to say, there aren't exactly that many twists and turns. It's not a plot-driven novel, but there are a lot of sort of emotional climaxes and emotional twists and turns in the relationship of Anna and Vronsky and Karenin. And, Anna gives birth to an illegitimate daughter, who's fathered by Vronsky and such. So there are twists and turns emotionally, but not necessarily in terms of the plot. But another chunk of the book is devoted to a man named Levin, Konstantin Levin, who wants to marry because he's in love with Kitty Sherbatskaya, who is the younger sister of Dali Sherbatskaya, who is married to Stephen Oblonsky, who is Anna Karenina's brother, if you can keep track of that familial connection there. A big chunk of the novel follows Levin, Konstantin Levin, and his attempt to sort of woo Kitty, at first unsuccessful, but later successful, and also about his attempt to run a farm in the Russian countryside, and his sort of thoughts about labor in Russia and the working class in Russia, and also his thoughts about just like life, the universe, and everything, I guess, and his sort of existential angst, especially after his brother dies. We do get a small look at Levin's relationship with his brother Nicholas, who is this severe alcoholic and very, very sick, and there's a very powerful scene where Nicholas dies. That's not a huge spoiler. There's not honestly that much to spoil in this book. Again, it's not a hugely plot-driven book. But a lot of the novel follows Levin and Kitty, and to a degree Dali Sherbatskaya, who is Kitty's older sister, who actually at the beginning of the novel, with the scene that opens the novel, is Dali finding out that her husband Oblonsky, Anna's brother, is cheating on her with their children's governess, and that sort of is what initiates the plot. But Dali and Oblonsky are definitely side characters, and yeah, so this is just a novel about relationships and thoughts and feelings more than it is about plot, and that's something that I am totally into. That was not my problem with the book. I think that this is an excellent novel. I loved the parts about Anna and Vronsky and Karenin. I loved. Those were the parts where I had a hard time putting the book down. I was so invested in those characters, even if they aren't all that likable. None of them really are. I think the one purely likable character might be Dolly, maybe Kitty as a second, and maybe to a lesser degree Levin, but Levin does get kind of annoying, which I'll get to in a minute. But you know, I think that the quote that was brought to my mind by the story of Anna and Karenina and Vronsky was something from BoJack Horseman. If any of you watch that show, BoJack at one point is talking about his family, his mother and his father and himself, and he says that all three of us were drowning and we didn't know how to save each other. And I think that that quote applies just as much to Anna and Vronsky and Karenina. They're just three people who are drowning in the situation that they're put in and don't know really how to save each other. Even Anna and Vronsky, who love each other deeply, don't know how to save each other because they're locked in by society, sort of Russian society's expectations of them. Expectations of Anna as a husband, Vronsky as a high-class he is account, and Karenin's, obviously, expectations as a politician and as, again, just a member of high society, sort of. He has to maintain his reputation. But it's not just that they don't know how to save each other in terms of society's view of them and the sort of rule-breaking that they do, or the immoral, quote-unquote, things that they do, but also just emotionally, they don't know how to save each other. You know, again, Karenin is this very cold man. Anna can't seem to stop herself from doing shitty things sometimes. You know, she and Vronsky are so driven by their passions, and they struggle with controlling those passions, even when they know that something that they're doing is going to hurt each other or someone else. And that's such an incredibly human experience. It doesn't make them likable, but it makes them sympathetic, if that makes sense. And that whole part of the novel I just adored. And I'm not going to go into any more depth on like commentary on it, because I think there's been enough about, you know, Anna Karenina written and said. The parts that I didn't like, Levin's chapters. We need to talk about Levin's chapters. You know, the second half of his story is more about his relationship with Kitty Sherbatskaya, which is kind of interesting. But the first half is him trying to run this farm and working with peasants to run the farm, and it's about him trying to write this book about labor and his sort of philosophy of labor as it applies particularly to Russia. And those parts are just really boring because there's all these pages and pages about agriculture and, you know, what we can do to help the working class and all these things that seem so irrelevant to the story in them. There are just pages and pages of it. And usually when I get to a point in a book where I get bored with something like that, for example, in the whaling chapters in Moby Dick, I try to look for, like, what those sections are doing. Like, what's the reason for having these here? Is there a good reason that the writer included them? And doing that doesn't necessarily make me like them more or enjoy reading them more, but it does sort of help me. It's helped to put them in context and help me to work through them a little bit. And I couldn't find that reason. I couldn't find a reason for them to be there. I didn't get it. If any of you get it and have input, then let me know. But I just didn't get it, and I didn't like reading about it. And there's also this whole section where Tolstoy describes, like, an election that happens in the, like, regional government, and that all is, again, the same thing. And so I didn't like that, and I'm conflicted about that, because I sort of see a lot of myself in Levin, because, like, those long dissertations on agriculture, his existential angst that he goes through. He has this long passage where he sort of suddenly realizes, like, oh my god, everything is meaningless because we're all gonna die someday. You know, that's very honest, I think. It's not very sophisticated, but it's honest. And I see myself in that, so to speak. But it didn't make it any more enjoyable to read. And so Levin's parts were just really dull to me. Now, I'm conflicted about that to a degree also, because I think that in Levin's chapters are probably the sort of thematic crux of the story. The thematic crux of the story that is contained, I think, in this epiphany that he has at the end of the novel about just, like, not being shitty to people, basically. And I think that goes back to Anna and Vronsky and Karenin's story, because they all struggle with not being shitty to each other, and they struggle with that against their own passions and against the expectations of society. And what their story sort of shows is how it actually isn't that easy to be nice to people all the time because you're driven by your very human, almost animalistic passions. And Levin finds it too. It's in his epiphany that it is difficult sometimes to be nice to people. So his is the thematic... He holds the thematic crux of the story, I think. So I'm conflicted in that degree too. And there are some good bits of story between, in terms of his relationship with Kitty, and I do think that this novel is just important in terms of, I think it's about showing compassion to people, about well, yeah, anyway, but yeah, so I don't know, I didn't end up loving it as much as I thought I would, because I think in large part because of Levin's chapters. If it had just been Anna and Vronsky and Karenin and the sort of soap opera that is their relationship with each other, then I think that this would have easily become a 5-star read, because I think the themes are timeless and the characters are really fascinating. I feel like I could talk about any one of them for an entire video, which is why I haven't gone into that much depth on any individual character. Yeah, I just think it's a great story. But then there's this whole sagging, not necessarily sagging middle, but this whole added monstrosity of all this, talk about agriculture again. But what this book did convince me of, and I'm gonna have to eat crow a little bit here, because I said multiple times on my channel that I was not that interested in reading War and Peace. What I think this book has shown me is that I think I actually will really like War and Peace. I think I might like War and Peace more than this, because as I understand it, War and Peace may have a bit more like action. I know that there are plenty of I know that there is plenty of agriculture talk in War and Peace, and a lot of other like philosophical sections. But the philosophical sections of this, the whole existential angst thing, I didn't mind that so much. That all is sort of my jam. So if there's that in War and Peace, I think I'll like it. And if there's a bit more action, and if there's more of the soap opera kind of side of this, then I think I will like War and Peace. And this did make me more excited to read more of Tolstoy's books, because again, like, in terms of like characters doing things to each other, he's really, really good. So yeah, I liked Anna Karenina. This isn't a negative review. It's just a conflicted, mixed to, well, I don't know. It's a conflicted review. I did love Anna Karenina. I think it's a book that will knock around in my head for a long time. And so my feelings may change towards it over the coming months or weeks or years. I don't know. And I think I may reread it at some point, and we will see. We'll see what happens. So anyway, thank you all for watching. And if you've read Anna Karenina, then give me your thoughts. If I've been inflammatory in this review, then let me know, and we can have a talk in the comments. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you didn't mind the outdoor setting. I needed to sit out on my porch a little bit because I've been inside for reasons that I'm sure you all know. Yeah, anyway, I will let you go and talk to you later. Bye, guys.